Alright, what's up everybody? Finley King here. Today I'm doing a transition lesson. Essentially what I'm trying to do is I'm going to take this water droplet shot that I have here that I just took on a hiking trip a few days ago, and I'm going to create my own transition into this waterfall clip. Now, these two clips are not actually super similar. The only thing that is similar is that we have movement, going down in the camera. So when I was shooting this, I was moving my camera downward. And then when I was shooting the waterfall, I was also moving my camera downward. So in order to sell this transition, I'm going to have to do some things. So first, I'm going to look where I want to make my cut. And essentially, before I cut, I have to think about how I'm going to sell it with motion. And essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to speed up this end section. As you can see, the water begins to fall. The water droplet here begins to fall. And then it starts to kind of get blurry and the water droplet goes out of frame. So I have to think about, like, right here is where I want to kind of start to make my transition. And I'm not really going to want any of this footage at the end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to speed it up. Now, I shot this originally in 180 frames per second on my GH5, which means it's really, really slow. And in order to get more motion blur, in order to sell this transition, I'm gonna have to speed it up quite a bit. So what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna decide where I wanna cut that drop. And essentially, with the song going here, I want it to occur right at the bass drop. So anyway, but we're not gonna worry about that quite yet. So I'm actually gonna turn off the music for now. So I think I'm going to probably want to cut this clip right around here, or this is where I want it to start speeding up. So what I'm going to do in Final Cut Pro X is I'm going to click on the clip, I'm going to hit I and O, set your in and out points, and I'm going to speed up the rest of this clip by a pretty heavy percentage. Like I said, I shot this in 180 frames per second, so in order to speed it up, I'm going to have to speed it up a lot in order to create more motion blur to sell the transition. So after I've selected my in and out points here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the speed function or time functions here, and I'm going to create a custom speed up because the ones that are set up on Final Cut Pro X are only 2 times, 4 times, 8 times, and 20 times, and I actually want to speed this up by 5,000%. And as you can see, as soon as I speed it up to 5,000%, it is really, really small. And if we watch it back, you'll see that happens really, really quickly. And essentially, when you're creating transitions on your own, you really want them to occur within, I would say, about a 6 to 10 frame span between the two clips. And what that means is, so I have this going at 24 frames per second. I want the end part of this clip to only last for 4 to 5 frames. So as I scan through this, you can see that it begins speed ramping right here. So what I've done is I've created a speed ramp, and it begins speed ramping right here. You can see the little green, and this is showing the separation of speed. So we have this part of the clip going at its normal 100% speed, and this part going at 5,000% speed. And the 5,000% is only occurring for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it's done. And that is exactly how we want it. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frames. I should have identified that is occurring for that many frames. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to count out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What's up, Levi? So I'm going to count out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frames. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the clip. And I'm going through the frames by just using the arrow keys on my keyboard. Then I'm going to drag over and I'm going to cut it right at 5. Now I have to do the exact same thing with the waterfall clip. So essentially, this is where it gets kind of tricky because I don't really know how many frames I sped up to 5,000%, so I have to do kind of my best guess because that really fast motion now has to appear at the beginning of this clip. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I remember it was about, that many frames. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the waterfall clip now that is also has the downward motion, and I am going to select an in point, which is here. And if you don't actually select an in point and you just select an out point and you already have the whole clip selected, it'll just select that starting point as the beginning. So all I did there was just press out or O on my keyboard, I and O. And then I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to set a custom speed of 5,000. And remember that I need this, once I set this custom speed of 5,000, the beginning of this clip, I need at least 5 frames here. I need 5 frames. and then I need it to stop. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to count out 5 frames from the end of the 5,000 the 5,000% speed. So I'm going to count backwards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's almost a perfect take there, because as you can see, I have probably about 3 or 4 more frames. So I'm going to do that again, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm going to just do 6 just for good measure, because sometimes the speed ramping occurs a bit earlier, and it's not what I want. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut the excess speed. So now I have only 10 frames between these two clips. And as you can see, the motion here is going down, and it continues. So you have the downward fast motion of the water drop mixing with the downward fast motion of the waterfall. So next, you're watching this and you're saying, yeah, that makes sense. That it sells it pretty well. The motion is good. If you didn't want to sell it even more, you could stop right here. But that's not what this tutorial is. We're trying to make this as clean and smooth as possible. And I'm going to show you guys how to do that with a color board. So essentially, I'm going to click on the little color icon up here in the right. And first, we're going to deal with the water drop clip. And essentially, what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be keyframing the water drop clip to get brighter and to match more of the color that is present in the waterfall clip. So what the heck does that mean? That means that this end frame right here of the water drop, as you can see and you're looking at it, it's bright. Yes, it has some white color and has some white in here, has some green. It's pretty well exposed. It's a bit overexposed. And if we compare it to the very first frame here in the waterfall clip, you see that there's a lot of white. There's some dark in here. But we want the end of the clips to look similar. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to set up keyframes at the end of the water drop clip and at the beginning of this clip with a color board that are going to make the end frames look similar. And this effect that I'm talking about right now is pretty much the essential, what it is. It's the same as this like bloom transition. As you can see, this like bloom transition, if you ever mess with it, what it does is it overexposes the end of one shot and the beginning of another shot in order to create the transition. But I'm showing you how to do this by yourself, so you don't have to have any plugins. You don't even have to use your stock plugins here, and it's going to look more natural because you did it yourself, not just chucked on some random transition on Final Cut Pro X. So first things first, you're going to go in here. Like I said, you're going to select your clip first, and then I'm going to go into Add Color Board. And then I want to make sure that I have my playhead here at that 5 frame mark. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can see it's kind of estimate it right where it first starts speed ramping. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a keyframe right here. This is the little add inside keyframe. I'm going to hit add inside keyframe. And then essentially what I'm doing first, I'm adding this keyframe at the start because I don't want any of the colors messed up at the beginning. I want them exactly how they are, all right? I want them just like this. And at the end, now I'm going to drag to the end of this clip, and I have to go over 1 frame, so that's actually the end frame. Final Cut is kind of confusing in that way. So I go to the end, and then I press my left arrow key to get to the beginning. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to expose this final shot so it's similar to the beginning of the next shot. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm actually going to increase the highlights a bit, probably to around, I'm going to put them at about 50. I'm going to probably put the shadows also to about 30. And as you can see, as I'm doing this Final Cut Pro X recognizes that you're changing from that keyframe that you set earlier right here. And as you can see, watch it, see the sliders, they'll move up to this new place that you've set them up at. And so essentially, I'm going to make this frame now look bright white. See this? So now it has changed from where I set it up to right here, and now it's far brighter. And the reason for that is I want it to look more similar to the start of this other clip. And there's a way that you can get really, really, really nitpicky if you hit Command 7 and you look at your Luma waveform and you set up a Luma waveform that looks similar to the end clip and the beginning clip. We're not going to do that. I am just doing it by eye. If you want to get really nitpicky, you can mess with the colors, saturation, so you can literally create keyframes that match the end clip of one clip to match the beginning of another clip, and you can create almost seamless seamless movement, whatever you want to call this, color board transition in Final Cut Pro X if you're building your own transition. So we're done. We're done with this. This looks good. As you can see, if we select this clip and we watch the exposure go up, all we're messing with here is the exposure. I'm not going to mess with the color or saturation. You can do that though to sell the transition even more, but I'm just trying to get the point across in the shortest amount of time. So now I'm going to do the same thing in this clip, but I'm going to instead I need to set my first keyframe actually a bit further down. So first thing, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because that's where that super fast part is. And then I'm going to add a color board to the second clip. Now that I've added a color board to the second clip, I can hit the keyframe button, and this is important because I want the after the transition has happened, I want the clip to not be messed with. Essentially, I want it to look normal. So I'm going to hit add keyframe, and then I'm going to go back to my first frame of this shot, which can be found here. That is the first frame of the shot. And now I'm going to match this clip by exposing it just a little bit. And it's important not to expose this one too much because it'll look kind of funny. Probably also set that to like 30. And as you can see, the keyframe button came up, and even put the shadows up a bit. And now we can look between these two clips and check this out. So now we have this clip and this clip, and see how they're exposed a bit similar? They look good. And essentially, now when you watch it back, it should sell it. Just like that. So it exposes it real quick, and you have continuous motion from the water drop to the waterfall. And you have it. So the first clip is exposing itself in a span of 5 frames, and then the second clip is decreasing its exposure over the span of 5 clips, and we have continuous downward motion as to sell it. And essentially that's it. The last step here is I'll just show you guys this real quick. The last step that I'm going to do is I want this transition to happen on this bass drop here from the song that I have. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to increase the length of the first clip just a little bit. So it's going to start out, and now the bass drop is going to happen right there. See where it hits right there? It's right at where the transition happens. And then if I watch it back, it'll look like this. Just like that. Thank you for watching.